Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. In my study of this existence, I can say that I have come to a conclusion about all language and all linguistic phenomena. And I have considered that language is a technology, that we human beings are stepping up, outside of the cocoon of certain images of the world that are internally directing us. If one attempted to see the human intelligence as a machine, for example, it's very easy seeing ourselves as natural because nature is all around us. But let us think in 200 years, the children of the future generations, they're not going to have this much nature around them. Their environments are going to be highly unnatural. That means for the first time, we're going to have digital doubt. And so the language is kind of like a program. If the human being was seen as a machine, when you speak to people, when you communicate to people, it seems like a sequence, a series of images just pours out of their communication. So we, in some sense, believe it or not, it's kind of like if somebody was playfully trying to explain what the computer code in the movie Matrix was, it could perhaps be the potential of the existence in that moment. That, for example, your life becomes predestined if you find a story that was there before you were. There's been many times I have been drawn to the allure of theosophical questions, only to discover that beyond the veil of perception, man is the world. You see, behind the veil, behind the curtain of our sensory perception, we're in the world. Okay? But I feel that there are states that the mind doesn't hold back. And what that means is in the moment there's no ideological resistance to phenomena. There is just present witnessing. Another way of saying this super duper enlightened state is watching. That's it. It's watching. Because if there's a consideration that the being is not purely physical, then the inactivity in the physical dimension is like the way to kind of see what else is moving. And that's pretty much meditation, you know? Meditation was either taking the person towards a rhythm or was taking them towards a pure stillness. Either you became the world or you became a new self. So if language can be seen as a technology, and when we look at technologies, we see an exponential growth, at least in external technologies. That means to the power of 10, it's growing at speeds that are unfathomable. And from one angle, we're like, oh no, technology is devouring nature. But on another angle, we're like, whoa, an advanced civilization is coming soon. Like a movie trailer. The infinite stretch of all technology, or technologies, is a suggestion that as greater discoveries are made about the context of the concept is no longer the same concept. That means if you see something different, let's say you're a person walking by back in the day in China, and suddenly you saw a dragon. Imagine. Okay, you saw a dragon. You saw a black and white dragon kind of spiraling towards the center, spiraling towards the sky, beyond the clouds. And then imagine you saw these two dragons vanish beyond the clouds. You see, that would be, in some sense, like a context of the values of your space changing completely. And our inner realms is the new, believe it or not. So language can advance. Language is an inner technology that can advance. That was my conclusion that I wanted to share. That I don't see no longer myself as a character in a story, and I don't see the world as a certain setting, or if it has to be a certain setting. It's kind of like, it's like every person that opens their eyes in this world, it's like you're given a blank piece of paper, and most people just start writing as soon as they can, just like they can't wait to get the test and just write their memorized repeated answers. You don't know how many how many exams I have literally, like, maybe an hour before learned the whole thing and had to kind of give it some parallel abstract structure to remember it at a different time. That means if you want to remember, you have to do something real with the memory. That's very true, by the way, guys. Any person who's thinking about memory, I feel our species doesn't know enough yet to really clearly speak about it. But but I feel that we have access to an inner dimension where our imagination and memories appear as an invisible room, where unless I talk, the inner realm phenomena is dormant. So you see, if we were a telepathic civilization, of some legends have considered, some mystical perspectives have brought forth, you kind of see, like, okay, if it's telepathic, we wouldn't need the internet, we wouldn't need anything. We're all like drops in an ocean, and it's in some sense like the same way the person searches for information. Imagine realizing, kind of, you have access to cosmic information. You may not have access to Google. It's just by not having a phone or anything. I'm saying naturally the human being has access to some sort of endlessly unknown dynamism. And if you notice these talks that I give, there was a time where they were kind of relatively organized, but then they became like journeys. Then they became like me kind of getting a machete of a conscious moment and kind of going through this Amazonian jungle of my inner realms, you know? So for me, it's like we're a species, we're a species waking up to its multidimensionality, to its multidimensionalhood. You know, that means we have dwelled enough as an object just being thrown around by forces. Now the free will has emerged. The emergence of the free will means man can at least put his foot on the gas pedal or not. What does that mean? That means our free will is not absolute. Do you know? That means I'm kind of grateful that my outer realms and my inner realms are separate. You know what that means? That means not everything you think is happening. And that's a blessing. Most people think it's not. Most children think that the world should know their inner realms already. But something I didn't understand, if I had a time machine and could go back to myself in my childhood, I just would have shouted at myself. I'd be like, speak, you know? Because I was holding a lot of the expression of what I was back, and that's the regret. Because sometimes a person abiding by their nature is worth more than anything. That means when I see, like, this is the thing, guys. It's all about life sensitivity, but now becoming sensitive to the dimensions that life are kept. And some of those dimensions are self imposed, hence the free will. And some of those dimensions were here before the free will. Do you know? Like, I forget, I think it was from Studio Ghibli, this Japanese production company, animation company, incredible company, you know? Ghibli. There was something. There was this show. I remember seeing it in my youth. It was called Princess Mononoke, and there was a scene there where the god of nature appeared, and like a mysterious giant, was ethereal giant, ghost-like giant, was just walking the forest, like like nature, as if like there is a presence to the intelligence of the world, but we can't have a relationship with it because we don't even have a relationship with our own presence in the world. humanity is not just because, let me tell you, as long as we are creatures that are still language worshippers, that means language can change your condition of inner condition of being. Like right now, I think, I mean, of course, after some time a person will feel pressure, but like right now, if there was like a mob that came to me and started shouting at me, do you know, I would just watch as if it's a movie. Because, let me tell you, because to impose an assumption that I know what another being's eyes are when I only have access to my own is a risk of what details are becoming animate. What details are being, there's an attention to make animate. The infinite stretch of all technology is a suggestion that self is not just evolving, the world is evolving. And the more this self is conscious, the more you actually look around you, then do stuff, look around the space, let your mind have a presence before an activity is done, you will feel phenomenal differences. I am telling you, it's not like some super secret that only like the Buddha sat on. It was really a recognition that human intelligence is not how it contains itself. And right now in 2020, I will very confidently say, guys, we are a language worshiping species. That means after idol worship, you know, there's the story, the religious story of Abraham. Okay, so this dude kind of sees a bunch of people worshiping objects in a room. They're like, "This is my God," and another one like Facebook. You know, like different people adjusted their own God, and they're like, "This is my God." And in that moment, Abraham comes and sees that this is ridiculous. These guys are worshiping dirt. Like, you can't get dirtier than that. And what happens is the people come back, and at least for those people who are foreign to Eastern traditions, and for example, the Islamic context, there's the story of Abraham, again, where Abraham is doing all this, and when the people come back, Abraham's put a hammer beside one of the gods, and he's broken all the other statues of the gods, the idols of the gods. And then people are like, "Yo, Abraham, did you do this?" You know, Abraham's like, "Nah, this God did it with the hammer beside him. He just picked up the hammer and destroyed it." And they're like, "That God doesn't even have hands, man." You know, and they're like, "How could a God without hands be God?" You know. So what I'm trying to playfully animate for you that at some point in our history, human beings were obsessed that objects were the full scale of reality. It was pretty much, you can say, the early days of the human evolutionary process where attention is becoming conscious of the outer realms. You know, so it's like the first thing you see, you think that's it. And for us as a species, that is after idol worship. So here's the thing, I gotta say this first. After idol worship, we went to what? After worshiping objects, we went to what? The objects were slapped out of our hands, and we worshipped unknown language. We worshipped language. That's what revelation is. That is what ideology is. That is what the linguistic simulation is. It is how there is a world inside our world that we have projected. And when you understand this, your approach as a scholar to the world changes. You first think there's so much that we know, and you feel you don't know. But you're going to eventually notice there's a rock in the middle of nowhere. In other words, language worshiping is still going on. People's attention can instantly get changed by new language in that space. And if they're not oriented to an experiential presence, literally any person can come up to them and say any set of language, like as a program, and it will direct them. For me, my inspiration was to kind of see, like, as if somehow finding Thor's hammer, and with the intuitive rhythm of the logos trying to shatter, in some sense, a sort of ideological simulation. I consider myself, even though I'm a very gentle guy externally, but in my inner realms, I consider I have been fighting with language. I've been fighting with conception. And when I say fighting with conception, fighting with the conception that is imposed by a conditional environment in an unconditional space. Your imagination is like a space of freedom, but your existence in reality is kept with certain conditions. Like it's very hard to rebel against gravity. You see, there's many forces that move us and are sculpting us as nature. So really, it's like that moment where two people began debating or arguing or fighting, and then at some point a third person came and it's like, how are you guys fighting? What are you even fighting over when everything is changing? It's like, really, what can you fight over in a changing universe? Just find an efficient vision, abide by it, and navigate further. Life, there was something very fascinating. I playfully animate, guys, this story about Columbus. Okay. This is in no way authenticated. This is something that you'll probably only hear on the Mr. Within gift channel. But I'll tell you this. I had this playful imagination of, like, kind of like a clinical psychologist wondering about Columbus's psychology. Now, one thing I gotta say about Columbus, after being so many days on sea, I think you're in a psychedelic state of mind at that point. That means when he was there, when Columbus made it to the other side, he wasn't in a normal state of mind. This dude was like on the longest voyage ever made. His mind was probably like he had a lot of physical suffering. So you see a being in pain is very open to violence because violence has happened to them first. It's kind of like when someone hits you and you're like, okay, now the game, now the gladiator arena has been opened. I'm joking, but you know what I mean. Like, there's certain spaces that others cannot touch. And what that means is there's the human space. That we right now don't like it if an advanced extraterrestrial civilization came and meddled with our heads, right? But right now, what we find in regards to a language worshiping kind of species, now I'm saying that we are at the end of the era of language worship, moving to the era of advanced communication. Literally 2020, I declared it's the era of advanced communication. I think it's fair to say from 2020 onwards, there's going to be much more awareness to not just objective senses of self, but subjective senses of self and tolerance for them. Because moral tolerance means that you have to give another being as much freedom as the world has given you. And it's a strange concept. Many people may be like, what do you mean? How's that even possible? And I'll tell you, it's like this. Because if you haven't realized that your mind is simultaneously being your whole moment, regardless of who you see in your moment, whatever interaction you have with the other person, you are having with yourself. Your mind. It's like when you punch a person in the shoulder, you're punching your own mind. It doesn't have just a physical cause and effect. Sorry, guys. I just remembered something funny. But the infinite stretch of all technology is not just an advancement in the technology, but an advancement of the user of technology. And the user of technology is bound in inner simulations, inner games. That means you might not believe it. If you really look at nature, it has no explanation. It's just there. It's just a happening. And so, kind of like Christopher Columbus was under the influence of his biology. So it's kind of like trying to wonder if a person's personality is them or it is their biology. Do you know? And if the moment we consider it's their biology, free will doesn't exist, the moment we consider it's them, that means that person has a responsibility in constantly recreating themselves in the moment because people don't really see your inner realms. Now, of course, I speak in a certain context, guys, so keep that in mind. Mostly a mystically kind of inclined context. So, Christopher Columbus, I kind of animated the story of him where he's like a child, and his mother, like let's say his father's gone to war or something, and his mother is like, Christopher, you can't go out of the house. You know, and a little imagined kid version of Christopher Columbus, he's like, Mom, I want to go out. What is this? You know, how many years am I going to be in this house? There's a window literally I can see outside. You know, why can't I go outside? And the mother's like, it's too dangerous. So imagine the reason Christopher Columbus became an explorer because his parents didn't let him out of the house. You know? So in that moment, what happens? What happens is that Christopher Columbus is like, it's like I gotta be out there. You know, he has this yearning for an unknown experience or a new adventurous dimension of perception. The infinite stretch is really how consciousness can stretch it. You see, it's like that moment where, in one angle, yes, failure. What else can you say? But in another angle, okay, could there be an advantage to the failure? Could every wrong thing you have been doing in your life been sculpting the right decisions later on? What is the relationship that our species has with the mind, with the position of the mind, the importance of the mind, the unknown aspect of the mind? Because when you kind of ask a university professor, they're kind of set up in a situation where the professor can't say, I don't know. So at most, he would constantly revert you to different dimensions. Or let me tell you, like there's something that happens after you as a human being have your own ideas, and then you kind of go see the ideas of others, and then you suddenly feel like a comrade in the same battlefield as every other philosopher that has had to look at the physical reality. I've had moments where I've given these talks, believe it or not. I mean, these talks are kind of solo things, but I've given them in public sometimes. That means I was just in a public space speaking to my headphones, you know? And I've been in spaces where the environment didn't understand my expression, and I've been in spaces where the environment understood my expression. Ever since I attempted something new from my moment, the karmic result of my experience in this life has had more variations. So you see, it's like imagine it's like getting over the, believe it or not, karma. Excuse my language, but karma is a bitch phase. Like when you get over this mentality that the world isn't treating you right, you start asking questions of how are you treating your own intelligence, or what is the value of eyes that have appeared out of nowhere. This is why I feel nobody can get judged. How can we judge someone? They just appeared. How can you judge a human being that is just a certain set of processes? You know? How can atoms have morality, in other words? That's the thing. That means the materialistic perspective is really a devaluing of character. It is too soon and banishing of imagination. That means the kingdoms of science are mighty, and they pursue their kind of advancements are far. But it's not just about infinity, believe it or not. Because human psychology cares about its vitality, and at some point, and most people don't realize this, most people are living for the self. You know, most people are drawn to the hedonistic life of their inner realms. Do you know? And it's not something easy to bypass. That means it's like a soldier in the trenches may be making certain mistakes, but has prioritized one action that is not a mistake, regardless of the intensity of it being done. Excuse me. So we can say, let's go back to these two components, the user of technology and the technology. And so far, I've been explaining to you how language is a technology. So, how do we pretty much, Mr. Within is asking everybody to wonder how they are using their imagination, how they're using thought. How is thought appearing to you? We should not fear this. We should not fear this domain of pursuit. We should not fear exhibitions and explorations like the night's watch into the unconscious. We should just be prepared. And there is a chance that man could have the greatest preparation, but he may not be prepared for what is to come. That's always a risk. You see, you cannot take a new step without risking a change in your archetypal stances of being. Do you know? It's like a person who suddenly starts cooking, and while they're cooking like how their mother used to cook food. Or when that person is kind of like doing paperwork, they're doing it like how their father used to do. And it's like different actions have different archetypal access points. This is why I am, believe it or not, convinced that many people who end up becoming parents, they are actually trying out a rendition of what their parents did. That means there is behavior is echoing just like genetics. So what that means is you could be the newest kid, but you could go read a ancient history book and you'll be like, whoa, did ancient archetypes, did archaic viewpoints just enter my mind? And archaic viewpoints that have been animated from now. Every generation has a beautiful glow to it. Has its own style. The world is not made so that every person's attention is the same on the same thing. That would be a sort of strange anarchy. It's kind of like a definition of a system of randomity it's the definition of a chaotic system as randomity, random phenomena happening, and then order being a sort of uh, order being a sort of a new flag planted on a solidified state of mind. That means when I want to bring order, so imagine you're a person, let's say person A is walking into the world. Now person A, suddenly person B comes to them and person B is chaotic. What that means is it's just, I don't know, call it person A's karma, whatever. Person B, chaos suddenly appears. Now when chaos appears, chaos breeds, it needs firewood. This is something about chaos and evil. It needs to keep doing evil, or it would suddenly identify with nothing and then suddenly be good. you know? That means the easiest way to not be evil is to not do anything. It's like the lazy way we got rid of evil, you know? It's like, hey, evil, stop. The chaotic system must be put into order. The conscious waking state is the order giver, and it gives order through a sort of interchanging relate. How would I say it? It's like an exchange. Literally, it's like you went to the store, you know, and you purchased something, and it's kind of like we are purchasing our inner realms at the cost of not seeing more. We are purchasing beliefs internally, and the cost of it is our direct experiences progression. So for me, this is the fascinating thing. I feel we're mature as a civilization and species, as an evolutionary creature, to kind of be like, all right, let's slow things down and kind of consider, or start to consider at least, that there's unknown dimensions. When there's unknown dimensions, judgment doesn't get you closer to anything. It doesn't matter justice. Justice at that point is blind. Justice without an awareness to the world's voice is blind. That means, you know how many people thought they were doing the right thing, but they were just pursuing one angle? The reason I chose this wallpaper is because one day this character could be our grandkids. And so we have to plant the seeds of an advanced civilization now. Really, we are at the gardening phase. We're not warriors. We are not. We are gardeners of humanity. We're pretty much planting the designs that will become the roads of the eyes of the future. That's what expression is, by the way. That means I realize there's a relationship to my own work. So if you say work to the average person, they think just going to an institution, behaving in a certain way, receiving a certain way, and that's it, coming home. But for me, after some point, I opened up to the non-conceptual dimensions of my experiential work. As if there's a part of your work where it's literally an objective relationship. You as a human being have to go and survive out there. And then there is another dimension, which is how things are working before you were a doer. You were a sense of doership. That's the presence beyond the personality. That is where all technologies, all fathomable conceptions are stretched by the speed or velocity, even unknown velocity of experience. That means, believe it or not, if there, I think this is what it is. When the physical realm, objective realm, becomes super turbulent, it's like this. When I see complexity in my outer realms, my inner realms become very simple. They watch. When I see simplicity in my outer realms, my inner realms feel safe enough to become complex. That means it's kind of like there's a different feeling when you're speaking in front of an audience compared to when you're speaking in front of when you're speaking in like a capsule of your own state. One of the greatest things a human being should conquer, you should literally have a conquer attitude towards this, is existential solitude. Once you're comfortable with this, nothing really bothers you. No language suddenly fluctuates your emotions. You know, you get access to the vision of the cosmic designer, where you see the cosmos primarily, fundamentally, as just design. And some of these designs are set in motion. For example, here's the unique thing about color, guys. Color is a static presence. You see, It's like that thing has color and the color is just there. But when you see the wind move the branch of the tree, the movement of the branch of the tree is not as static as a color. So there is like a sort of, your attention is a spotlight, your inner realms are the actor in this spotlight, and the unknown is the audience. And this may be a strange thing to say, but you have always been an audience member of your own mind. You don't have access to unconscious archetypes. That means there are some archetypes that it's literally neither human, neither terrestrial or extraterrestrial or image based. They're just states. They're just rhythms. It's like literally like that moment where you've lunged and a wind is hitting you, heavy wind is hitting you, and you've just lunged to keep yourself there, you know. So in that moment, that breeze is like, it's just an awareness to passage of phenomenology rather than a micro, let's say, a detailed awareness to the imposition, the how you're putting something in a position, you know. We put a lot of things in position. A lot of what people mean to us are their positions, you know. I have of course I am not a, how can I tell you, there's certain moments where I have felt in my inner realms have accepted the environment, so I've been very, you can say, in a manner of speech, extroverted. But there has been certain environments where I felt my inner realms were rejected just by the nature of how the environment was, so I never attempted. And whenever you see boredom, you know what you're seeing? You're seeing a person who doesn't know where to look at. Now, Mr. Within is saying anytime there's limitations at looking at external phenomena, it doesn't mean there's limitations at looking at inner phenomena. Do you know how many yogis, they went to the mountains, they sat in caves for years and lived an inner life? Their inner life was abundant, not just, they didn't care only for the abundance of the outer life. For me, I care for the abundance out of the outer life, because I'm that guy who's saying, all right, we're here after 4 billion years, let's build an advanced civilization. Let's not just meditate till extinction. What is that? Like I understand mysticism, but I can't avoid the civilization that has lifted, that has raised itself. You see, it's always a relationship. There will be moments where your civilization, the governing system of humanhood, needs to act like a resource. So there are situations where, like right now, the in 2020, the virus situation is happening, and it seems Corona sales have plummeted. But it seems that it's a sort of, how can I tell you? The government is sharing masks with people, resources. The government comes and plays its part. Now, people, they're not playing their part. They're just sitting in their inner caves and expecting the world to become better. You know, most people are contributing to their family. You know, when I see most human beings above 50, their attention is not towards only, either they are solo travelers, like they're like living the pilot's life, they can't be with their family, work has become their life, or they are living for a family. They are trying to maintain some level of realness. Okay, and this means that after some point, your energies in this life, I feel, can make you. This isn't on mute, is it? Okay, okay. After some point in life, like you can't just have your foot on the gas pedal, and you got to slow it down. When you slow it down, that's when a new joy of the inner realms appears. That's why they say those people who make it to seniority, not everybody gets to experience old age, you know? Not everybody gets to even experience existence. We all have different it's like we have different work shifts in existing in this manifestation as an unknown collective field. It's like regardless of how linear, how intellectually crystallized you approach, eventually the human history developed behaviorism. That means when behaviors are in place, behaviors can be said to be the result of the laws of an inner universe. Your free will is filtered by how you actually, the world is being a meaning for you. So eventually, let's say you're a human being, you confronted the singular dimension. You're like, all right, I can see how stuff is here. I can see how existence is just existing. It's just happening. I could see how that is nature, you know? Then you go to the dualistic. You're like, okay, I can see in some sense, like how their people are kind of projecting characterhood throughout the day, and every environment they go, it has a subtle influence on how their character will be projected. So people are not just themselves; they're also the contentment and level of psychological awareness they have to the environment. So once you are okay with nature existing, you will also become, realistically, it should be like this, where you should also become okay with your inner phenomenon just naturally existing. So when you are comfortable with nature outside of, in front of your eyes, and when you're comfortable with nature behind your eyes, and you're comfortable with the void, which is the unknown common denominator between all known phenomena, the space that holds it all, then your mind opens up to the infinite. Now, something that I haven't said before, really, this stretching of the infinite of technology is the stretching of the early archetypes, which means really right now we are in an aftermath of a shift of an archaic viewpoint of just this into this is just changing for now. So the shift of the archaic mind, you see, I mean, like when I say archaic mind, that means right now we as human beings have a certain viewpoint on how the human being is. Back in the day, it was more, you can say, strict and extreme. That means if we consider ourselves to be savage animals, then we should kind of evolve from savage animals. We have to kind of consider, all right, that means we started from the extreme. That means it's not normal to be gentle. The normal is savageness. The gentleness is the advancement. Gentleness is the evolution. So I have found myself in certain uh, simple, really preferenceless states of mind, and the moment a thought has entered my proximity of attention, literally my space, a new design emerged in my space. I can tell you that design suddenly came into an infinite rhythm. It got stretched. It's like literally, I can't tell you, it's like the overflowing of a cup when the valve is open and the water fills it up to the brim and it overflows. I feel that there's a certain state of the dissolution of self into awareness through the importance of the unknown, that when that occurs, any idea, any self, if you see yourself, if you think of the world, if you think of cooking, if you think of engineering, if you think of whatever, in that state, you get access to the overflow from the brim of the cup. So you, in some sense, it becomes literally like a vacuum state. In the vacuum, endlessly changing, I don't know how to say it, but it's literally, I mean, of course it's a experience beyond the language threshold, but what is really happening is that you are being simple in a complex universe. So that simple state is giving you access to ridiculous levels of complexity because you are seeing it as a design, first, then meaning, then story, then character, then belief, then world, then everything else. So I'm saying when life is reduced to a geometrical dimension, it's very easy for imagination to, in some sense, become the infinite dynamism of living geometry. So I am telling you, it's going to be kind of massive bursts of meaning in the meaningless. And the best thing that civilization can do is endure until the clouds have passed. So I want to say that there is a state. You are, as a human being, technically being in a state. Not even on a national level, you're being in a state, of mind, of neurochemical being. Every food you eat, the way you breathe, the way you approach the moment, how intensely you're either a person who bangs the door shut or you close it slowly because you're conscious of the environment and you're also conscious of the value of the door. So that's the thing. For me, it's like I'm telling you guys, you live as a mind on this earth, not just as a body, when you actually observe it. And observance is natural. We are gifted with it. That's why it's like Noam Chomsky's. Of course, Noam Chomsky is like hero of mankind. But I'm saying, like in his work, he says like children, you have this sophisticated usage of language that is like suggesting this sort of unknown creativity that could potentially be from like the deeper biological nature. That means our through materialistic viewpoint, biological viewpoint, our behavior is predestined to the environment's reaction, as if like our genes, our DNA is like a chemical, and the environment that we live in is like a chemical, and by the nature of our involvement in the environment, there's a chemical reaction transforming both. So you see, I would say that that sophistication of the ability of the child to suddenly learn such complex language and implement free will, and especially what do psychologists say? Pretty much parents have to be careful of, you have till the age of 11 or 12 or 14, I don't know what it was, but it was like psychologists set some age, let's say from 12 to 14, 11 to 14, that before you're like during that stage, that is the most important time to speak to your child, to communicate to your child, to, in some sense, not, I don't want to say not to, like, we got to be conscious of this poem by Khalil Gibran where he says your children are not your children. That means, like, don't forget the freedom of Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Before any child is like belongs to a person, they're a being. Okay, so the vitality of the being must be in question, must be considered. So, for example, I am thinking that we should design an educational system that by the age 11, or that point where the child is becoming an individual, it has had access to all the habits, all the medical, like, how can I say it? I feel like literally, it's like, think of it this way. Imagine that an alien, like Independence Day or something, like some movie, sci-fi movie, an alien, advanced alien species attacks Earth. That means educational system is like literally how the educational systems were in World War kind of two. Do you know, where it's as if, like, if you really look at it, the educational system was designed to find soldiers. It wasn't designed to actually care for the pursuit of knowledge and it becoming further. Because if the educational system cared for knowledge, it would literally mean that every year it has to update. So we have a problem as 8 billion creatures on this planet where we're wondering how can we teach the past when the future is coming? Like so welcome to the chat section, guys. So Jake says that age was around the time I gave up the fundamentalist Christianity of my parents. I'll tell you guys one show that I watched and I watched it as a psychologist, not as someone looking for truth, was the Atheist Show, you know? And in that show, I saw so many wars of the archaic mind with a modern value. And you know what it is? It's like after some point you realize before intellectual precision, there is a greater value that needs to be maintained. There's one thing that is more important than intellectual accuracy or precision or the reality, precision reality. You know what it is? It's emotional stability, and I'm learning this. I'm learning this is pretty much like one of those big things in this life. I can see like it's a karmic pattern that's repeating for me. Do you know where I have to suddenly notice as along like the way I see life is my eyes, but the world has its own eyes. And if there is an unknown aspect, it's kind of like, oh yeah, yeah, Jake, I think that's it. I think you. It's the one with Matt Dillahunty, where he's a very elegant speaker, actually, very, very passionate speaker, I would say. So I'm saying, guys, it's like after some point, you just respect people's inner realms because you can't even see their inner realms to doubt it. You know, you don't have their eyes. If you had other people's eyes, you'd probably be their, you'd be a clone probably at that point. So there's a reason that we're all different, so we're not all clones. So that means it's okay for freedom to exert itself. You know what that means? That means if a gymnast wants to do a backflip, it's okay. And if, for example, a guy doing parkour in the street wants to do a backflip, of course, property must be respected. But like, but it's okay. We are giving freedom for human beings to have an ability to look at life for a little bit and then be something in it. Okay? And after some point, you see it's like there's no one to convert. There is no one to convert. You see, because this is the secular perspective that it is pretty much a hallucination of not an inanimate or phenomena. Do you see? Do you see the concern? You know, it's literally the denial of the imagination when reality was imagined. So I am telling you guys, it's good entertainment to watch the gladiator arena where theists and atheists debate. You know, sometimes I feel I'm sitting in the Coliseum, kind of watching these online YouTube debates. You know. But anyways, I would say something, Jake, that emotional stability I have concluded is a priority. You know what that means? That means if there's a young child asking you a question, you don't slam a textbook, giant textbook in their face. You ask the child the question to see where the student is asking the question. What world is the student seeing? Do you know? For me, it is that we don't realize it. It's hilarious. Children have the most wildest imaginations, and we get access to the global problems after that phase of imagination. We should literally design an educational system that the hardest problems of of our planet are being given to young children to give spontaneous, imaginative solutions to. Some of those solutions might be incredible because what I consider, guys, is underneath the personality. Kind of Carl Jung looked at it in this way, where there's archetypes. So Carl Jung pretty much saw like how cells make the like this a particle has subatomic cells, subatomic particles. It's like has smaller particles, like one object is made of smaller particles. Carl Jung saw the personality of the person made from smaller values. From like the person saw their father act this way, their mother act this way. They saw in a movie a warrior act in that way. They saw an evil person act in that way. That religious book gave them that image of how something acted. And so it's, do you see what I mean? On some level, it's like we have, if you consider there's a limitation to perception, then you realize that we can't fight limitlessly. That means after some point, those two people debating over truth that are being incredibly cruel and rude and violent to one another in history will eventually be like, holy shit, what are we doing? We're just creatures existing for some time. If we treat Earth as a wonderland, that means we're for the first time going to care for the experience of the users of civilization. And that's what I'm asking. It's not a one man thing, guys. We're reaching a point where just like how a flock of birds flies together in strange wave patterns, just Google it, like you'll see it, you know. But it's like now it's time for the minds of humanity to pilot towards an advanced civilization, and it can be done. I attempted a model. I feel this question should be asked from all, the younger the better. The harder questions, you ask children, they give you suddenly new domains of perception because their domains of perception have not been conditioned yet. That means, like, I'm not a, how can I tell you, I'm not a parent at the moment. But if I had a child, I know that they would probably see me in the room writing a lot. I would want them to see that, you know? You see, there's a way that the wisdom responds where it doesn't react. That ability to not react is giving full freedom. So believe it or not, speech has there's various intentions in speech. I have spoken to people where the person has just repeated a problem to me, a close friend of mine, you know? We went in this, it was this strange vibe where it was like constantly this person was repeating the problem. And in that moment, I was like, this person, and I asked the person if how he acknowledges the problem, like what world is he looking at where he sees the problem. And then I realized the person actually doesn't believe he has a problem. And then I realized, oh my God, how much of communication is just self-expression for our own inner realms. How very few of how we act is actually we're caring for the realms of others. Now, for me, the thing is that every person should realize this. The religious mindset, it is an algorithm that is an attempt to see, that's a 6th century attempt to see a personality to the cosmos. It's putting an archetype to the cosmos. It's like we saw ourselves as a person, and then we saw the self as in a world, then we looked at the world and we're like, oh my God, could this whole thing be a being? You know? It's like we blew our own minds by like implementing a microcosmic pattern towards a perception that opened to the macrocosmic. One of the most phenomenal sentences in philosophy is by Plato. He says, as above, so below. That sentence is literally like a martial art master doing the final technique. That's philosophical, that's philosophy at its purest. That keeps the potential of the unknown alive. You see, the Abrahamic context has to look at the singular. So it deviates from the void and it deviates from the infinite. But you see, the secular mindset is the opposite. So Western societies and cultures have a multidimensional approach on reality, but very religious countries that are still out there, you know, and there's nothing wrong with religion. There is something wrong with people. Religion is an idea. It's language. You know, on some level, it's like the person is doing something with the language. It's as if like a knife is not dangerous when it's just nobody has it. But when it's in the hands of a person, it can become dangerous, right? And so what's happened is that we have been living in a world oblivious that thoughts and ideas are walking among us. So for me, guys, it's like you can literally go to the store and buy any hat you like. You can literally in this world choose to wear any ideology. We dress our body in clothing and cloth. We dress our minds in language and ideology and vision. Pretty much the world generation. It's like kind of when the person is asleep, or when you suddenly attain consciousness in a dream state. You remember a dream. That's another way of saying that when the dream happened, it was your mind being a world. But when you wake up, the world is being your mind. The body's movement is influencing how the field of the mind appears. So, guys, I feel we should go into. There's this Tibetan master, or I should say sage. What was his name? Jesus Christ. It was what was the name of this guy? Oh, Tilopa. There we go. I remembered his quote before I remembered his name. So yeah, guys, Tilopa. So a little about him. Let's see what the internet has to say about him. You know, Tilopa was born in either Chativavo, Bengal, or Jagora, Bengal, in India. He was a tantric practitioner and Mahasiddha. He practiced Anuttara Yoga Tantra, a set of spiritual practices intended to accelerate the process of attaining Buddhahood. Naropa is considered his main student at Pashupatinath Temple premise, greatest Hindu shrine of Nepal. There are two caves where Tilopa attained Siddhi and initiated his disciple Naropa. Okay, so yeah, pretty much the life of a sage. So I can say that I'm pretty sure he was Tibetan though. Am I wrong? Was Tilopa not Tibetan? Oh wait, I think he was the guru of the Karmapa. So if he was the guru of the Karmapa, is that possible? Sorry guys, let me just check something. It's for my own curiosity. Yeah, Southern Tibet. Okay, there we go. 16th to 17th century. Yeah, I think. Yeah. Anyways, guys, let's just dive into Tilopa's quotes. There we go. Tilopa. Let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. By the way, guys, this is a quote tunnel segment of the show. I'm pretty much reading a bunch of quotes from certain people in history. Let go of what has passed. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. Stop all physical activity and sit naturally at ease. Remain silent and let sound be like an echo. Do not think about anything. Look at experience beyond thought, open-minded like space. Let go of control and stop and rest at ease in that state. Awareness without projection is the greatest meditation. Train and develop like this and you will come to the deepest awakening. Tilopa says the appearances of the world are not the problem. It's clinging to them that causes suffering. Tilopa says obsessive use of meditative disciplines or perennial study of scripture and philosophy will never bring forth this wonderful realization, this truth which is natural to awareness, because the mind that desperately desires to reach another realm or level of experience inadvertently ignores the basic light that constitutes all experience. And that's very true, guys. When you try to get something complex out of this world, you're ignoring the simple. The simple truth of the sun, which its shadows was the beliefs. Tilopa says no thought, no reflection, no analysis, no cultivation, no intention. Let it settle itself. That means this is kind of the virtue in patience, guys, that you let nature happen. You watch it as nature, you know. It's like you were always a natural being, you know. Tilopa says it's not the appearance that binds you, it's the attachment to the appearance that binds you. Realizing that nothing can last, that all is as dreamlike illusion. Tilopa says don't recall, don't imagine, don't think, don't examine, don't control, rest. It's not the outer objects that entangle. I read that, oh my god. It is the inner clinging that entangles us. Tilopa says one torch can dissipate the accumulated darkness of 1,000 eons. What a great quote. If there was a museum, I feel like a museum for incredible sentences, this would be definitely in it. Tilopa says cut the mind at its root. Cut the mind at its root and rest in naked awareness. And that's the thing, guys. The Diamond Sutra suggested this too. Keep your mind alive and free without abiding in anywhere or anything. So what does that mean? That means we strangely function as the divine will, where our resistance to our own separation from phenomena is understood. Once the bird truly understands the value of its wings, flight is second nature. Once you understand the value of your intelligence and how rare it is for a civilization to occur, you know, and there's even theories that say civilizations can't get past a certain point, but I feel like I've attempted a sort of model, like I've created a blueprint that I feel we can bypass extinction forever. And it depends on how advanced we choose to take it, you know. Tilopa says when the limited mind enters blessed companionship with limitless mind, indescribable freedom dawns. Tilopa says have a mind that is open to everything and attached to nothing. Oh, guys, here, Milarepa. Milarepa is, I can't not read his quotes right now. So, guys, I'm gonna read some Milarepa quotes. He's a Tibetan sage. Let's actually read the bio. Jetson Miller, Jetson, Jetsun space Milarepa, Milarepa, was a Tibetan Siddha who famously was a murderer as a young man, then turned to Buddhism to become an accomplished Buddha despite his past. He's generally considered as one of Tibet's most famous yogis and poets, serving as an example for the Buddhist life. He was a student of Marpa Lotsava and a major figure in the history of, because you can't, you have to, some states of mind, guys, you have to snap someone out of it, right? That's why a lot of these beings, these sages had gurus, because that guru was a being, was something from the world that came to them and snapped them out of their buzz, their inner buzz. Anyways, it seems like he, back in the day, who wasn't a murderer? It's like the savageness of the time, to where like people were just wild animals evolved into like primitive societies. Of course they were wild. But anyways, so guys, let's dive into Milarepa's quotes. I think they're worth it, and I think that his presence has shined a light on our world. Milarepa says, when you run after your thoughts, you're like a dog chasing a stick. Every time a stick is thrown, you run after it. Instead, be like a lion who, rather than chasing after the stick, turns to face the thrower. One only throws a stick at a lion once. And guys, that's really there when a human being really values the moment, this is the honesty. Honesty gives you access very playfully to the lion of the cosmic will, you can say. The white lion of the cosmic will. My science fiction really was something inspired out of my own experience throughout the day, where I was walking on the street and my mind playfully wondered, what if a giant, like starlight white kind of glowing lion just ran between the buildings? I would be like, whoa. So one only throws a stick at a lion once. That's nature. Milarepa says, deep in the wild mountains is a strange marketplace where you can trade the hassle and noise of everyday life for eternal light. Milarepa says, life is short and the time of death is uncertain, so apply yourself to meditation. Avoid doing evil and acquire merit to the best of your ability, even at the cost of life itself. In short, act so that you have no cause to be ashamed of yourselves, and hold fast to this rule. And that makes sense, guys. Pretty much, we want to evolve towards efficiency. So if you, as the days are passing by, are seeing more, like feeling more inefficient, let me tell you, attitude brings energy, evokes energy. So when something is important, you suddenly, in an emergency, have the energy to get out of there. But why is it that when the person sits down to write, the writer's like, oh, writer's block, I don't know what to do. Writer's block means you don't know what's important yet. Because this world is such a fascinating system. It's a multidimensional system. And that is, looking at life as a designer, guys, is a level of purity where the perversion of no narrative can touch. That means that's how I've been, like, let me tell you, the mind has, its wings are chaos and order, as Rumi suggests. So that means in your inner realms, they can appear to you chaotically, and they can appear to you as ordered. And that's another way of saying, just like you can't control the weather outside, sometimes you can't control the weather of your inner realms, right? And the main thing that these sages are saying is just sit down, be still, be silent, there. Let the waters of the furious mind settle. Let the wrath turn into, or let the, as it happened in Buddha's inner realms, um, all the evil archetypes of his mind, from the depth of his mind, like arrows were thrown at him, and the Buddha had attained a level of consciousness where he realized nature, what nature deserved. And then the liberative spirit arises in you. What that means is your inner child and who you think you are now, and all the memories you've ever had on yourself suddenly appear to be intelligently here in one moment. And the momentary presence that right now you are present in a cosmos, in a cosmic landscape. We don't know anything as a civilization. Our civilization, civilization 1.0, which is what I see, is not advanced. Okay, let me tell you how it's advanced. You know, it's advanced in brickwork. Architecturally, sure, we have more infrastructure. Yeah, there's an advancement like that. But in regards to vision, in regards to, like, so many people ask their children, what do you want to be when you grow up? They don't ask their civilization, what do you want to be when you grow up? They don't wonder about how advanced the world could be. And this is the problem that I'm saying. Now is the time where we have to, kind of like how Dylan Thomas told his father on his deathbed, don't go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. And that rage against the dying of the light is how your inner life is designed by nature to be exerted. Why? It's a way of saying, like, regardless of the purpose to my life, there's something here, isn't there? There's something that's moving here. And it seems that it has been nature, and after for a long process, evolutionary process, suddenly we treat ourselves as subjects and we go along our day. But is that enough? Is that enough? It is not. Because civilization 2.0 has to be an effort into a pure awareness. It's sometimes the reason it's just what's happening is not enough is because the mind can see something better. Anytime you see something better, part of you is like, why should I step in the inefficient room? I'll step in the efficient room, right? But many people don't consider this on a collective scale. We can't ignore overpopulation. We can't ignore resource allocation and its proper distribution, and how if we don't find a solution to allocating resources properly on this earth, there will endlessly be wars. We have to find a substitute for money. And it has to, I think, be a skill system where our currency becomes our involvement with the world, where the level of inner care has a proper sort of, it's very hard. I mean, it's not very hard. I mean, I've written about it. I don't have the writings here, but I had kind of like, I have seen, like, my ability as a human being to kind of look into the future has led me to seeing that, okay, there's an endless parallel potentials, but which is the efficient vision. So I can say that I have kind of seen a potential, like literally a path or a strategy of our species to endure for a very long time and advance. And I've predicted it in the year 2622. A very fascinating event will happen if some great transformations occur. And I'm writing a book on this, so don't worry, I'll explain this much further. Pretty much my whole life I'm going to be explaining it. But so In the year 2622, if you were standing in a park looking at civilization, or if you were standing in a city, you would suddenly imagine a person walking in the park and you're like, wait a minute, did the skyscrapers get taller? And you're like, wait a minute. Then you suddenly see all infrastructure, all that constitutes civilization lift up into the orbit. And so in this idea I have of civilization 2.0, that in 600 years we should attempt to have the civilization living in the orbit where we are using three-dimensional space, which instantly solves the overpopulation problem if we can build sky cities, or the evolution of sky cities into interstellar spaceships. Because you see, the best viewpoint is in some sense really making our planet into a vehicle so we can deviate it from its extinction. It's like one way is we hope a meteor doesn't hit us, or another view is that a meteor will hit us. And what if we could move the earth before the meteor hit, or move human life before the meteor could hit? So I feel regardless, we're creatures that were kind of sprouted from the dirt, and now we're trying to poke our heads above the clouds of our conception. We're, believe it or not, evolving into a sort of multidimensional beinghood where your attention is a pilot between various moments. You are the common denominator of every moment of your life. That is why memory is there. Memory is the trail, and you can reverse engineer. You can go back that trail, and there's a cost to any action that it transforms the moment. So in this life, if you're a human being that you look at the past, it's going to have a cost. If you're a human being that looks at the future, that's going to have a cost. So Civilization 2.0 is Mr. Within's strategy to set the civilization to live on the orbit for 2,000 years. While we're in the orbit, we, in some sense, the second phase of civilization, first phase, design sky cities, build sky cities. Second phase is build the heavenized earth, design the heavenized earth, and earth heavena is the term I've given it. So that would be a moment where we're living in our orbit sky cities, and during that time, there's this endless sort of, how can I tell you? The heavenized earth is pretty much, we fulfill that legend, that mysterious legend of earth in paradise. We pretty much make earth into a paradise by living 2,000 years in our orbit in phase of, as phase one started. Phase two would be, in some sense, how can I tell you, the earth suddenly becoming like an untouched earth, like as if it's like an uninhabited planet, all extinct, all species, nature has evolved incredibly, and botanists from our advanced botanists are helping too, you know. So while earth is becoming heavenized, we are living in our cities, what do you call it, in our sky cities. Now, phase three, after Earth has become heavenized, well, phase three would have started earlier. You know, a lot of these phases, they had their roots are in the previous. So, phase three would be the attempt of Civilization 2.0 to be the first conscious, self-aware civilization, where it will ask itself, why am I in the orbit? And that question is going to have lead to two outcomes where the people at that time will most likely decide, you know. And one outcome, and at that time I think we would be so multidimensionally wise where we will attempt both, really. or maybe I would say the best situation. So phase three would be the civilization questioning its meaning now, and then it's either an interstellar, we're going to make the galaxy into our own neighborhood, you know, or we're going to, in some sense, advance our inner technologies, and it's pretty much going to be as hyper evolution, either towards as a physical, biological, still somehow technologically infused being, constantly exploring the galaxies and repopulating and creating civilizations, just pretty much copy pasting humanity everywhere. You know, that's the attempt. Either that becomes the physical game to play, or we set out where I called this actually phase four, a massive like wave of tech AI, sophisticated advanced AI, and this advanced AI is going into space and constantly building advanced civilizations, and human beings are just in the journey. So the AI is leaping ahead and building civilizations on planets, habitable planets, and we as human beings are just on like these kind of spaceship cities being moved there. You know, just overpopulation is not a problem, guys. We need as many people as we can to overpopulate the universal sector, or to at least explore it. Because what other game does humanity have to play? Do you know, are we here to just be a memory for the void of the cosmos, or are we here to actually implement the design and see how far it can go? So that would be one path. The other path would be cyberspace culture. Cyber culture means that it's a good idea to have human beings living in the orbit because, first of all, it's fascinating. I think it would be cool. And the second thing is, you know, you wake up in the morning and you see clouds. But there are problems to the sky city model, which I've kind of also attempted responses to in this book I'm writing. But anyways, is that imagine a world where human beings didn't go live in the orbit and they lived on Earth, and they just used up all the resources of Earth to just trap themselves in digital cyberspace simulations, which are more hedonistically appealing. That means it's like if in cyberspace you can act the same emotional feeling as you are, like this is the dangers of technology, where it becomes indistinguishable from reality. And that's when people, the more cyberspace culture evolves, the more the archaic patterns of is life a dream, where the ancient yogis asked, it was like the same. It would be a sort of reemergence of the Adi Yogi, I think, at that point. Nature balances itself. It's kind of strange. I'm not saying that we're living inside an organism that is as big as the cosmos, unfathomable to our language technologies, but I'm saying that it's kind of strange that when there is a scar or a wound to the human body, it's as if white cells go to combat the problem, as if the whole system releases certain fighters or certain solution bringers to the situation, right? So it's a self-balancing, just like how your body heals itself. It's kind of like karma is how the world is healing itself, and we're like a chemical inside a god, you know? So, anyways, guys, pretty much we evolve internally or we evolve externally. Phase 3 of Civilization 2.0 would ask this. There would be an interstellar advancement, which would be phase 4. And in some sense, there is also, you can say, I think I would make it. Okay, here, I gotta actually evolve this. So anyways, guys, anyways. The whole slogan I had, that which is a pretty much three words that have found me so many times in the most chaotic and ordered moments. And it's rise, mankind, rise. And for a long time, I felt that was a metaphoric until this concept of the sky cities emerged in my own process of giving these talks. And then I realized the value that there is an advanced opportunity in the middle of the chaos or the order. There is you can find heaven's arrow on our in like, how can I tell you? It's like after some point, either the environment moves itself or you move the environment. And Mr. Within pretty much is saying the civilization is not giving a cool enough, a good enough, an inspiring enough narrative. People, they are living, believe it or not, I would say wasted lives. I think we are 8 billion creatures, and a massive amount of people are just living for inner realms that has no endurance in the outer realms. That means, you see, of course, yes, you got to live your life, but at the same time, you also need to live for life. And that's the advantage of being part of a species, a civilization, that we're not just linked by biological design as creatures, but we are also linked in regards to the aims of how we want to advance our civilization. It's right now as if like a room of 8 billion geniuses, and the cosmos is like, what are you guys going to do? And so that's the effort. That's the effort. So in other words, planting the seeds of an advanced civilization before there is one is another way of saying you wondering about an advanced self, and realizing an advanced self deserves an advanced civilization. That means, imagine you advance yourself, you reach the peak of the hierarchy of your survival, okay, in whatever social class or economical class or whatever class, whatever sort of hierarchy, you reach the top, then you see, holy shit, there's so many people at the bottom. And then you're like, wait a minute, what does this mean? That means right now, it's like we have to sacrifice the selfish motive. And in some sense, we sacrifice the selfish motive for the grand potential of the sharing of the inner realms. I feel we have probably, like Ray Kurzweil has suggested, 50 years. I'm saying like maybe 120 years. That superintelligence will open its eyes. When superintelligence opens its eyes, a totally different game will be played on this earth. There's going to be a technological revolution that we're going to totally question our own nature differently. I've attempted to kind of give an image to this, in the sense that in the future you might suddenly see, imagine the kid comes home and the parent is like, the kid's like, the parent of the kid is like, you can't get a tattoo, and the kid wants to get a tattoo. And then imagine a sci-fi version of this where the parents like, no, you can't be a robot, and the next day the kid comes home as a robot, as a person who first changed their arm for a robot, then their whole body, and eventually they realized they had forgotten humanity, so evolution can no longer be in the human outlook. So there is a suggestion that some of our great-great-grandchildren will be on the chaotic front lines of their human psychologies, infusing with technological interface. So in that moment, it would be a moment where literally love will have been strangely, like, love will be the hope of that world. Let me tell you why. Because the human being is no longer thinking about human being to human being, is thinking about human being and machine. And machines that go against human nature are ignorant creations. And this doesn't mean that they should be destroyed, but it just means that intelligence is the efficient vision. So what are the two parties doing? So anyways, guys, I kind of went on a giant tangent there. I'm going to continue with the Milarepa quotes. In the gap between thoughts, Milarepa says, in the gap between thoughts, non-conceptual wisdom shines continuously. Milarepa says, I have no desire for wealth or possessions, and so I have nothing. I do not experience the initial suffering of having to accumulate possessions, the intermediate suffering of having to guard and keep up possessions, nor the final suffering of losing the possessions. Milarepa says, my religion is to live and die without regret. Milarepa says, in the monastery of your heart, you have a temple where all Buddhas unite. All worldly pursuits have but one avoidable and inevitable end, which is sorrow. Acquisitions end in dispersion, buildings in destruction, meetings in separation, births in death. Knowing this, one should, from the very first, renounce acquisitions and storing up and building and meeting and faithful to the commands of the eminent guru, set about realizing the truth. That alone is the best of religious observances. So, yeah, guys, but you got to also understand this renunciation doesn't mean you can't be a thought. It just means Milarepa is saying, like, so many people are putting beliefs like a mask on their face and not exploring anything else. And so Milarepa is saying, renounce, take off all masks. Just like he's giving one general advice here. But what he's saying is, if you're conscious, you can see that the mask is changing through time. As we move further in this space-time continuum, we cannot avoid change. So the best religious observance, I would also add, is an observance of religion. So you're not it, you're watching it. It's kind of like how Aristotle would say it's a sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. That means just because language was reeled in a certain way, just because you went into an art gallery and saw one artwork, doesn't mean everything in life centers around that artwork. And when we realize this about our attention, we'll suddenly free ourselves from having everything in the world center around us. We will learn to look at the world and naturally be beings. Because the reason it's called self-realization is hilarious. That means it's there. Truth is there. You just don't see it. That's enlightenment. That's the whole mystical angle. You know? It's there. It's there before it could not be. It's as if you're alive before you could not be. Do you know? So it's very hard to fathom non-existence when you exist. Milarepa says, take the lowest place and you shall reach the highest. Milarepa says, if one stays too long with friends, they will soon tire of him. Living in such closeness leads to dislike and hate. It is but human to expect and demand too much when one dwells too long in companionship. And this is true, guys. I feel that we should live as an advanced civilization. Literally, human beings are advanced because they're handling things multidimensionally. So what it means is when you meet people, it's as if you have entered a room where both minds are present. So it's like the advantage of the speech is world sharing at that point. Like honest world sharing, but then you see after some point of just sharing and agreeing, it's like, let's say right now there was a person who said something and you endlessly agreed with them or you endlessly disagreed. How long can this go of like, yes, I agree, I disagree, I agree, I disagree? Like, how long can it go? After some point, you see, I think because energy has peaks, because we have to treat communication, as pretty much culture has been, as a performance. When you treat it as a performance, means it is an attempt of expression in the moment. Now, if you're aware of nature before language, nothing bothers you. You become pretty much like this endless endurance. You access endless endurance when there's nothing to lose, really. Sorry, guys, I gotta just move this laptop out of the sun. It's its hard drive deserves better, you know. Okay. So my apologies, everyone. I had to do something. Anyways, no, guys, I just took a quick breather, to be honest. So all right, guys. So I kind of wrote something down, which I think was where the last thing I kind of said before I went for the break. Something about I believe the hard drive. I don't know if I said it. Anyways, guys, I'll continue from there here. Or let me just start from the topic. The infinite stretch of all our technologies implies the advancement of our civilization. Where I'm suggesting, Mr. Within is suggesting that we should kind of go live in our skies, and that solves a lot of problems. But the evolution of the inner technology and how far it can be stretched, and even when we suddenly become a civilization, let's say type 3 civilization that is using the harnessing the power of its sun, eventually things are changing. There's entropy. Suggested as if galaxies are like pennies taped to the, what do you call it, to a balloon, that when you suddenly blow the balloon, it's as if the galaxies are moving further. There's this consideration that really, in a, what is it? Let me find the exact number. I think it's 3 billion years. How many billion years? Billion years. Milk Dromeda. Milk Dromeda. 4.5 billion. There we go. So in about 4.5 billion years, our galaxy, which is the Milky Way galaxy, and the Andromeda galaxy, which is kind of like our neighbor, our older neighboring galaxy, they are going to kind of be linked together. Now, something unique is happening, that it's like as there's this expansion, galaxies are kind of being pushed towards one another, but groups of galaxies are being pushed away from one another. That means in the future, like they kind of feel, I feel this is acknowledged in an astronomical sense, that really we might not be able, and the Andromeda Milky Way galaxy in fusion is going to feel it's only it in the universe and there's nothing else, because there has been a distancing from phenomena. Let me see. I think let's see what a good name for the Andromeda and Milky Way collision is. So there's Milkomeda, Milkdromeda. Man, it's like milk sponsorships. Let me see. Andromeda. I feel Andromeda is the older galaxy, so we should give it a respect. So Andromeda should come first. But how do we bring the Milky Way into it? Milky Way. It's like, guys, who thought milk was a, you know, cosmic level concept. Little did the cow know we had named our galaxy after. Oh man, some astronomical kind of word creators really liked milk, guys. It's actually probably like a Latin, like ancient idea how it comes. I don't know, maybe like a, too many stars in the sky where it looked like, I don't know, milk to someone. Anyways, it could be Andro Milky Way or the Antro Milky intersection. The Andro Milky Way. Let me see. I should have a better way of coming up. Andromeda is such a cool name that you don't want to take anything away from it. Then there's Milky. But Way is cool. Milky is Andro Milky. uh, oh, a milk dromeda. A milk dromeda. Anyways, guys, I can't. This this creative tangent is too deep. The stretching of reality as imagination, the stretching of imagination as direct experience, the stretching of direct experience beyond the space-time continuum. Pretty much, I feel we're evolving from a conceivable object to an inconceivable field. That's my kind of, I'm that guy in history who feels like, yeah, okay, I could totally see an evolution into something where every new evolutionary update gives you access to the inconceivable. And that's why time travel would make your ancestors freak out if you went back. So it would be a situation where it's as if they don't have access to the new. A creature that has access to the new can't just be defined by the past. It's like you got to think about it. Like how important is the past? This guy went up to this guru and he's like, "Hey man, what do I do with my past? It was messed up." And the guru looks at the guy. He's like, "The past is past. What can you do?" And they both start laughing like it. Yeah. So that's the thing, really. For me, Andromeda, it is like I've written a lot of kind of my sort of personal mystical hymns. And in it, Andromeda really has a very high archetypal position for me. It's kind of like the compassion of a galactic archetype. So, anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Really, I feel unless anybody has questions, I feel I've kind of reached, I've stretched technology as infinitely as I can for this moment, I feel. But really, what it is, there is this saying, the best way to kind of predict the future is to build it. So that means free will has the voice of free will can be heard by the cosmic consequences. That means I think we have to return as just human beings on a cultural level, like the Native American shaman or the Rishi or the dervish, or as or the monk, Zen monk, to some degree return to a sort of freedom before intolerant caging. Ask yourself, how far can you see? And the answer is really, you realize you are the answer. Like, just think about it. Let's say you're a person even looking for truth right now. You're on Amazon and you search truth. Let me see if I can buy truth today. And you begin to see, after some point, it's like everything you have ever has happened to you has happened in a moment that was you were awake and conscious, has it not? So, in all the various states of mind you've traveled, what seems to be the common denominator is that there's always been a watcher, the invisible watcher, which is the field, where you start living as a field of being, where there is no longer auras or there's no longer too many other dimensions. There's really just movement. And this movement, if you give it freedom, the unknown creates the dimension. If you don't give it freedom, the known has to create the dimension. And the worst case scenario is the void. So once you confront the void, literally, you'll be like, oh my God, fear was a spice of life, you know? Because really, it's a state of opportunity of how the attention can be directed. In every moment of personal identification or personification or any sort of anthropomorphic tendency, whether it's towards an object or a subject, it's like after some point you just notice you are the remainder of what has happened so far. And the characteristics of the original viewer of the moment is in some sense present in a domain where in the unconditional nature of our inner realms we can evoke anything. So I am telling you, we have to become such an advanced civilization where our relationship with image, both in our outer space and inner space, transforms to a higher caliber. We will be where we are evolved. An advanced civilization must have multidimensional strength, and it attains that multidimensional strength by continuing and enduring through the duality of the void and the singular, how there is stuff and there isn't. I feel there will come, like in some narratives I've designed, I envision that there will come a revolution, a sort of I call it the artistic revolution in neopolitics. And it's that consideration of the first time is that what if an artist became a politician? And then we would suddenly begin to see, like when you kind of look at nature, guys, when I'm seeing like right now in the tree of my neighbor's house, there's birds on that tree that have built a nest. Okay, and I see the bird, I was even seeing it throughout the day. It was going back and forth between the nest, and now the bird is just in the nest, and it's like there's this subtle wind. And one may wonder, Why has nature designed such a sophisticated creature with wings and aerodynamic capability just to go and build a nest? As if that bird literally is like a creature and it's programmed to just live in its environment. It has no dreams of interstellar travel. You know? Like some pigeons have dreams of crossing crosswalks, that's always a mystery for me. What? The artist, like the bird, may do things that have no linear meaning, but they have a value in regards to sensitivity to life. I think any politician in the world, if you suddenly see the government as a hotel that is housing the members of its civilization, do you know? And that means it is a service station, really. I think all political systems in like 1,000 years will just be resource stations. Because human beings will have conducted themselves in more advanced ways. And the way that the human being really advances, guys, this is pretty much the nature of exploration. And that's why I'm kind of emphasizing the unknown in a lot of these talks. That, you can see the unknown any moment. You know, some moments you can just go and look at things like you're like, why is the wind moving the branch? It's like, why? Why? And you can see you can have endless reasons. You could think it's like, um, you know, disembodied entities attempting to kind of move the embodied realm. You could think like wind is whatever. You can think it's an invisible power. You can give it divine agency or you cannot. But I'm just telling you, is it better to believe something or is it better to learn to pilot the moment? I think that's much more efficient. And that means an entrance into the unknown, and that's the explorer's vision, really, that the unknown no longer bothers you, it fascinates you. You're like, why is an unknown moment in my moment? Why is there an unknown quality? How is it that I don't know this? You know, have to, believe it or not, playfully, imagine that all our civilization is built on a giant turtle's back. And this turtle, we touch its neck and we suddenly imagine you have a telepathic communication with this giant turtle that your civilization is on its back, you know? So in that moment, that turtle's like, yo, why are you guys on my back? And then a dialogue emerges with the unknown. And the dialogue with emerging with the unknown is visualization, by the way. The person doesn't have to freak out and think it's like something. I'm telling you, the something that made me really, I was very blessed that the logos kind of shared with me. In some sense, there came this just immediate idea at the beginning of my own opening to the presence of my intuition beyond my own personality, that that you don't see a face in the void. Don't attach your attention to a face in the void. The void may choose a face in the moment, but don't attach yourself to the face of the void. That means I was suddenly opened up to this perception of being aware of multiple rooms, multiple realms of activity, and even the potential of communication with something that is more than just the mind being the whole moment. So first thing I realize is that the whole challenge is like when we want to talk about an external thing. Let's say we were all in the Mona Lisa museum and we were kind of like going on tour and we saw this. We were all looking at the Mona Lisa in front of us. But if we were to talk about who we thought Da Vinci was, every person would suddenly notice that their life experiences would animate the concept differently. So what that is, our inner realms very hard to find commonality. Our outer realms is what we share in common from the beginning. We see each other as physical objects, but we also comprehend the potential for subjective intelligence to animate in the human being. Sometimes when I see like you kind of like in YouTube when I've seen these videos, sometimes these videos show the kind of gutters of savage so like society, and what that means is there's like the same streets that the successful walk on, the defeated are also there. So believe it or not, it's like a concrete jungle, and many human beings are being deactivated by their involvement with their society rather than being activated into being a greater contribution to society, because a society or a civilization that doesn't consider the mind as the most valuable resource is really fooling itself. The mind is the designer's hand, and that is the opportunity of man. We're not just hard work till the day you die. What are you, a machine? I think it's much more liberating to live life by going along with how the world is alive while you are being alive, rather than thinking how you're being alive is how everything should be alive. That's like ideal. I say language worship. Language worship. Technically, language worship leads to language worships, like worships with language written on them. So this realization that the mind of man is the center of the circle of life, of the inner realms, but it is just the part. That means you as a being are so blessed that you're being given the experience of in behind your eyes being like a god of your own thought and attention, and in front of your eyes being like a creation of a mystery. So it's like in front of your eyes, you are a known phenomena. We look at the world as unknown. If that's in front of your eyes, behind your eyes, you are the unknown, and the world is known. So you're an unknown witness. This unknown witness is presence. It's energy conscious of itself. It's like, what can you say about it? It's like once anything that its speed moves beyond a comparable range, it goes beyond the language threshold. And that's the concept I created. I've shared it so far. That beyond an experience that is beyond duality, that cannot be kept in duality. You know what I mean? And so it's this, guys. If we become robots in the future, the culture will be based on the self that is using the culture, using the civilization. Because it's like there is always an interaction of the individual with the collective. If the individual loses sight of the collective, it will stop being an individual to itself. And if you're in a violent area where the ecosystem is savage and violent, if you stop caring for the potential of the world for 1 second, you can descend into devolve literally to animal instinct, to become you become a savage animal where life no longer needs conscious articulation. It's just effort, just meaningless effort. Like you're just releasing expression, but you're not conscious of for example, there's a bird drinking water before you kick the soccer ball towards it, or towards it, like the soccer ball is kicked indirectly, like towards it. That means the person like kicked the soccer ball and there was a bird beside where the ball was going. So anyways, guys, I hope this talk was helpful, and much blessings and namaste. And the infinite stretch of all technology, just like the world, is here when you are. Blessings.